All right. Sam.
Yeah. How we doing?
Good. I have a question for you.
All right.
What is the meaning of life?
Wow. It's a deep one right off the bat.
Starting off deep.
Well, that's for sure layered. It's definitely a layered question with a layered answer. What is the meaning of life? Well, I feel like the logical thing to examine in that question is meaning, specifically the definition of the word. Explicitly, meaning has to do with words. It has to do with how people come to interpret something. Symbol is a better word for that. So in terms of meaning and attributing that to life, it doesn't make too much sense. I think the question is a little bit absurd, actually.
Yeah. It gets asked so
Oh,
much. So
sure.
many people
I
say
think
it.
it's probably the most asked question. I think it's the most asked philosophical question, of course.
Definitely.
By-
Is there a better way to word it?
Is there a better way to word it?
Word the question, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe instead of what is the meaning of life, maybe how might or how should one live? Maybe a better question.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So what would your answer be to that?
Well, I think I don't think that with all these technological innovations today, with the age of information and so on, the fact that a 12-year-old can go on Google and look up absolutely anything, or the fact that we have all these AI AI and scientific revelations. I don't think things have really changed too much, at least for people, in this day and age, as opposed to, say, in ancient Greek history or even before, BC and so on. Things really haven't changed in terms of how people ought to live or how to find happiness or how to reduce anxiety and all those things. Things really haven't changed that much.
Right.
And so there's something I love that David Bohm says. He's a physicist. He worked on atom bombs in the early 1900s with Feynman and Einstein and Oppenheimer and all those brilliant people. There's something that he says about humans, and it's one of, and I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's, we have all these innovations every 100 years, every human cycle, yet upon all these, the basis upon all these innovations, they serve very unintelligent means. So we're intelligent in the process of creating them, of creating all these innovations, AI innovations, developing these new practices in order to curb our anxiety and help reduce inner problems within us. Yet it's done so by very unintelligent means. We take it from a very mechanical approach. We're very habitual in it. And I feel like that's the problem with a lot of people. Like for me, for instance, I used to be a very big smoker. I mean, I started smoking at the age of 17. And I really don't think I spent more than like maybe a day or two without smoking for like the next 5 years, 4 or 5 years or so, or 3, 4 years or so. And I stopped. And it finally occurred to me that the problem wasn't smoking itself. It wasn't cigarettes, it wasn't marijuana, it wasn't any of that. The problem was the chronic behavior. The problem was that mechanical way of thinking, which is, I think, with all these innovations nowadays, people are increasingly becoming mechanical in the way that they live. They're increasingly habitual, and they're kind of getting away from that spontaneous living. And honestly, how would you approach, like if you had an addictive habit, and say that habit was smoking, how do you think a normal person would approach that?
I wouldn't say there's like a normal
Sure,
approach from person to person, and I would guess that most people think that they can do it, and then they try to do it, and they succeed for maybe a couple hours or a day, and
maybe most times it's very forced.
Right.
It's extremely forced.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and then eventually they revert back to what they were addicted to.
Yeah. I mean, and naturally, I feel like that's what most people would say.
Yeah.
For me, for instance, as I already said, the problem wasn't the drug. It wasn't the behavior, or actually it was the behavior, but it wasn't the drug. It wasn't what most people would blame the addiction on.
Mm-hmm.
That most people blame the problems on the cope, which is I need to stop doing this, and the problem is the thing that I'm doing. But rather, it's the stressor, it's the behavior, it's the action behind, or it's. I'll say it's actually it's a bad way of wording it. I'll say this: it's the chronic behavior. Going back to the mechanical way of being, how I stopped smoking. I'm going to be totally honest. I stopped giving a shit. And it happened totally unanimously all at once. And right around the time that I made that promise to myself, I probably smoked every day, like 4 or 5 times per day, for like not several weeks, probably 3 or 4 weeks on. And then and keep in mind that each time that I did it, I didn't really care. I enjoyed it, and I made sure I enjoyed it. But slowly, as I kind of gave in to me not caring, that necessity behind that chronic behavior, it just slowly faded away. Like whenever I knew I wanted to smoke in the past, it was, I want to do this thing, but in the back of my head, I'd be saying, oh, I can't, I shouldn't be doing this. So then I effectively would be splitting myself in two, where I want to do this thing, but I know I can't, and so I don't know where I am, but I'm still going to do it because I still have that desire within me that forces me to do it, although I still am just yelling at myself internally. I had to understand, the thing is you have to recognize that duality within you. You have to recognize that just push-pull within you that's happening. Whenever you make bad decisions, or whether you feel stagnant in everyday life, or whether you're lazy, it really connects to all, chronic the problem is chronic behavior and why it happens. And I feel like it's important to attribute it to that, because that's effectively what that way of being that mechanical way of being, that habitual process of living, it destroys spontaneity. It destroys your creativity. It destroys your sense of wonder. Yeah. And those things themselves, that's what has crafted our finest literature. That's what has built the most gorgeous buildings. That's what has forged the most synergistic relationships.
Yeah.
And most notably, that's what has cultivated the peace of the people who are so-called enlightened all throughout human history. It's that clinging to what we feel is right or what we feel is wrong, yet always understanding that there's that other side of it. It's like you can't ignore the other half of something when it always exists. It's like, well, there's light and dark, there's up and down, there's bad and good. And the point is not to choose one over the other, but to do it situationally. Like, there's no ultimatum behind it. And that's why I like, for instance, fighting. I like UFC. I think it's an art, because you feel the weight of your decisions. For instance, if you make a mistake, you feel the pain of somebody else giving it to you, or you feel the reward of giving it to somebody else. But more importantly, there's a quote that I love that goes with it, and it's strike when you must. And people interpret that as almost an ultimatum. But really, it's kind of a woo way. It's flowing with it. It's a flowing through things, doing things situationally, and not really basing the weight of your decisions on an ultimate perception of how things should be, but how things are right now. And I feel like that's kind of what the world is getting away from in this day and age, with the age of information. And people will go online and they'll develop these opinions about things, and they're very ultimate, and people's egos are growing out of their heads. And the problem is, they have this clinging towards what they feel is right or what they feel is wrong. And once they see that, they're so steadfast in that direction that there's no changing it. They've developed those beliefs and they've cemented them within them so strongly that there's just no changing it. Or there is changing it, but not by way of how they have in the past. So I think it all connects. I think it's really, I think it's gorgeous. I think it's a beautiful thing.
So talking on like breaking addiction, I mean, we have most of our audience is college students, and when you're in college, you're surrounded by things that are easy to get addicted to. So what would you say to someone listening that might be addicted to, smoking, drinking, something like that?
Sure.
How would you overcome that?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I feel like all of it, as I've already stated, it's all relatively similar. At least the process of overcoming it is. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of just that you have to understand the chronicness behind the decisions you make. Like, for instance, my freshman year of college, I didn't really do shit. I really didn't do shit. Right nowadays, I'm pretty disciplined. I have a nice routine going. I wake up at 6 a.m. I trade and I manage my finances and investments. I work out. I train people. I'm a personal trainer. And I do all those things. And I also study and read literature and all these different philosophies and religions and so on. But my freshman year, I didn't do shit.
Same.
Same. Yeah. I mean, most people can probably say that.
Yeah.
But it's kind of that necessity that we feel that we have to be forward thinking. And it goes back to that clinging to how we feel things need to be. If you were to ask me, what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do in 5, 10 years, 20 years? What legacy do you want to leave behind? And so on. It's like, yeah, these are interesting questions, but the more we provide weight to them and the more we kind of build our lives around them, we're not living here. Like, we're not here. And the thing is, I know I'm kind of getting very broad, but it's just, it's that understanding chronic behavior. And that's why I talked about smoking and kind of getting over that behavior, because that kind of way of being, that mechanical way of, that habit that we have, it takes us out of, it completely destroys our spontaneity. So what I would say that's direct and rather practical about it is, I would say, understand what's happening now. Understand that the decisions you are about to make, if you are about to, say, scroll on your phone for the next 30 minutes instead of do an important homework assignment, or not go to the gym, or have another fucking, bowl of ice cream or whatever it is. Seriously, make that decision, but but know you are making that decision. Like, you can do whatever you want. You have full free reign to do whatever you want. But every decision you make sure that it is that decision that you want to do. And don't feel bad about it. That's the big thing. Don't feel bad about it. Like, if you want to have another smoke, do it. Do it. I mean, really.
Yeah.
If you want to have another bowl of ice cream, do it. If you want to skip that homework assignment, do it. But be aware of what happens when you do that. And I'm not saying don't be forward thinking. For instance, don't overcrowd your head with all this nonsense, or not nonsense, but all these imaginable repercussions of what would happen if you were to skip a homework assignment, or if you were to skip a leg day, or if you were to, again, eat unhealthily. Don't ignore those things, but simply, there's a way of being here that almost puts a fog over everything else. And in doing that, and in being with that flow and getting away from that chronicness, and kind of being spontaneous in your decision making, and really, really going full force into that, you really start to fall into this nook where you're doing things as you want to, and you're almost. If I were to say, or let me tell you this, all the literature I've read and all the stuff I've learned about religion and Zen, and the stuff I've read from Friedrich Nietzsche and Alan Watts and Jiddu Krishnamurti and all these people, they all say essentially the same thing. Zen, Buddhism, Christianity, and so on, Hinduism and so on, they all say essentially the same thing. And it's kind of that self-maxing, that hyper self-agency. And really delve into that. And what that means is, get rid of that chronicness. Really, when you make a decision, make it unanimously. And don't hold back on that decision. And slowly, and the thing is that this requires a bit of faith.
Yeah.
It really does. I'm not saying faith in the sense that, you have to believe in God or you have to do this or that and the other.
Faith in something.
You have to have faith. Like when you wake up and you get out of bed, you don't know that the floor isn't going to fall out from under you. Like you don't know when you get in your car that your engine isn't going to blow up. You don't know when you're driving that somebody else isn't going to, because you have no idea what other people are doing. You have no idea if somebody else isn't going to veer off the side of the road and crash into you. Mm-hmm. And that requires a bit of faith. And not necessarily faith in the strict sense, but faith in the sense that you're just going to do as you do and make that decision and cut out everything else that happens, every other thought, every other desire, assertion, or assumption that you make, expectation that you have, and really just make that decision. Yeah. And slowly over time, you'll find that, quote unquote, the better decisions will naturally occur in your life because you won't be so forward thinking. You won't be basing everything that you do off of the fact or off of the idea of how you should be, but rather of what you want to do right now. And you're okay with setting yourself up for failure because it's two sides of the same coin. Failure and success and so on. You just kind of move through it.
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm speaking very broadly, but it all really connects. I mean, whether it's, you have a bad habit of smoking or if you have anxiety or if you're skipping homework assignments or if you're not going to the gym, it's really all solved. The process of solving it is relatively similar. And it's just, it requires a bit of faith, really. So
yeah,
that's what I would tell most people.
So speaking on like a lot of things connecting, something that you've told me before that you find very fascinating is that Jiddu Krishnamurti, Indian philosopher, and Richard Feynman, American physicist, share a very similar story about a bird.
Oh, yeah.
So could you just first tell both their stories and then kind of explain the connection and how fascinating that is?
So yeah, we were talking on our monthly coffee outings as we were. There's these. Well, first, Jiddu Krishnamurti is a quote, and Richard Feynman's is a story, and I'll tell you the story right now. Richard Feynman is, if for the viewers anybody doesn't know, he's a physicist. As I said, he worked on the first atom bombs with Oppenheimer, and David Bohm is a person I've already brought up, and Einstein, all those people. He has a quote that his father, or his story that includes his father, and also little Richard Feynman. So Richard was playing on a playground, regardless of what age he was. He was playing on a playground when he was little with all of his friends. He's playing tag or whatever. And he saw a bird. It caught his attention. And he kind of sat and stared at this bird. And his friend asked him, in the midst of Richard Feynman just catching his gaze upon the bird, his friend asked him, "Do you even know what the name of that bird is?" The bird is a spieled cockatoo or whatever. The name is, whatever the name is, doesn't matter. That's a spieled cockatoo. And his friend started listing off all these facts about the bird. And at the end of all that, his friend said, "Don't you know anything about, birds? Don't you know anything about birds at all? You know absolutely nothing. You're an idiot." And so Richard Feynman went home crying, to which his father, also a brilliant physicist, I guess it runs in the family, said to him, "That sounds like the bird you described to me that you saw sounds like a spieled cockatoo or whatever. But in Chinese, it's called a yada, yada, yada. In Japanese, it's called a bunkarapeido, and so on." And he listed off every other language, the name of the bird. And he said, at the end of all that, you'll know absolutely nothing about the bird. Look at the bird. That's what will happen. Or that's where the knowledge of the bird will come from. You observing the bird. And that's the end of the story. And the reason why that's fascinating is because it's almost identical to what Jiddu Krishnamurti said in his quote. And the quote goes, "Once you tell the child the name of a bird, he'll never see the bird again." And I think that's absolutely fascinating. And I can't believe I can't believe nobody talks about that. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And it kind of goes back to what I said about that hyper-intellectualism with all these innovations and people kind of clinging to that right and wrong nowadays. It goes back to that because once you, for instance, I'll use the quote and story as an example. Once you hear the name of the bird, you kind of have this predisposed idea, mental image that is, of what the bird should be. And the thing is, it might or may not be correct in many instances that you actually do observe the bird. But what is happening is you are slowly building this egoic repertoire of mental imagery about the bird. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But it could happen about anything. It could happen about your self-image. That's something that you see nowadays with social media and so on. It could happen with money. You know, I'm a businessman. I do this and that and the other, and people start to become very greedy and so on. But that's why it's fascinating, because people have this steadfastness towards developing this imagery of something, and they think that's what intelligence is. But really, this accumulation of knowledge and ideas about things, it's not really what intelligence is. I mean, intellect might be a better word, but even then, it's almost it goes back to the mechanical thinking, because people once that mental imagery is filled in within somebody, then they'll just, whenever that conversations of birds are brought up again, and say the spielt cockatoo is brought up, then they'll just pull on that mental imagery again, and they'll naturally, by way of conditioning, they won't be able to really adjust their point of view of it. And that's just because, they've developed that sense of clinging towards that image of how they feel the bird should be, or the name of the bird, and so on. So, I mean, I just think it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that story. I love talking about it. I could tell anybody about that at any time.
We'll get back to Sam in a minute, but I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the partner of this episode, Rock Shark Review. Rock Shark Review is an annual theater production where groups of students spend months perfecting their acts to help benefit charity. The 2025 production benefits the Ballard Center, a nonprofit organization that provides support to children of families in need.
In lieu of doing a giveaway this episode like we usually do, the podcast is making a $100 donation to Rock Chalk Review to benefit the Ballard Center.
We encourage you all to attend the performances at the Lead Center Thursday, February 27th, Friday, February 28th, or Saturday, March 1st. Visit rockchalkreview.com for more information and to purchase tickets.
And now, back to the episode. So, kind of going off what you were just talking about in those stories, what is one singular concept you wish that every single person could grasp?
Sure.
And if it doesn't have to do with that story, it doesn't. Have to, but.
I say it does a little bit.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've actually already briefly mentioned it. The fact that there's always two sides to things. There's always two sides to a coin. There's always a front and a back, a light and dark, and up and down. And that you shouldn't choose one over the other, ultimately, but situationally. And the thing is, people are very, as I've already said, they're very steadfast in the way that they think things should be. Mm-hmm. And it's not that they're wrong in certain situations. It's that they're wrong by holding that predisposition for every situation, saying things should be this way without adjusting for it in every situation that comes upon them. So really, I'd just say that. And it kind of connects back to what I was saying about, getting over your smoking addiction, your habit, your way of kind of living habitually. people think that, the only way I'm going to be able to get over this bad habit is if I force myself. And obviously I'm not saying that, certain people, just based on their biology, they are predisposed to addictive behavior or depression and so on. And for those people, those measures might be necessary at certain points. But again, it's after a certain while, you have to be aware if you're overextending yourself. And that's what I would say.
Yeah, no,
That's what I would say.
The thing that I thought of when you said that there's two sides to everything.
Yeah.
Made me think of How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Okay.
Classic book.
I'm surprised I haven't read that actually.
Really? You haven't?
I mean, I have it on my bookshelf.
Okay. That was like
should read
the
that,
first
yeah.
book I ever read, and it like
Oh,
got me into
seriously?
reading. Yeah. But Dale Carnegie talks a lot about how when you're in conversation or in an argument, more specifically, you should always think from the other person's perspective, because everyone thinks what they're saying is right, but it rarely is. Same with the other side. They think what they're saying is right, and so if you put yourself in their position, the other side of the coin.
Yeah, the in-group creates the out-group. So
Yes.
quote I
Yeah.
like.
So I don't know. That's just what I was thinking, and it's kind of interesting, all the things you study and read and the people you look up to. It's all interconnected and
Yeah, absolutely.
very fascinating. I have here a list of your 5 role models.
Yeah.
So I want to read them, and then you can tell me what they have in common, because I can't figure it out. It's like it's like a riddle, dude. So your 5 role models are Richard Feynman, a physicist, Anthony Bourdain, a chef, Steve Irwin, a zookeeper. I know they do more things, but Jiddu Krishnamurti, a philosopher, and Robin Williams, an actor. What do they all have in common? I feel like this is like a crazy riddle thing. I can't figure it out.
Well, first and foremost, they are radically themselves. They're definitely very animated. They're very passionate. They're very easygoing isn't the right word, but they're very for developing somebody so that their repertoire of knowledge and creativity and so on is very interdisciplinary. For instance, Robin Williams, R.I.P., rest his soul. Whenever you see him in the media and videos and pictures, whatever, you almost kind of get this almost warm feeling within. You just look at him and you think it's
100%.
funny. You just think he's funny.
Yeah.
And Anthony Bourdain, you kind of, it's almost that same feeling you get. And that's because, he traveled, and the way he spoke about different cultures and places and meeting people and love and all these important concepts that people should understand and really look into. He was very passionate about it. Jiddu Krishnamurti, the way he talked about society and conditioning and thought and love and presence and all these things, there's a lot of passion just seeping with every word from him. Richard Feynman, I think and honestly, I'd say most people think this way too. He is the one of, if not the greatest teachers of all time. I mean, I would do anything to be able to attend his lectures, like nowadays. Really, like travel back in time just in time.
Yeah.
And I don't know shit about physics. I like science. I read about physics because I think it's interesting. I think they're really important, fundamental concepts that we should learn about just reality and everything else. But just the way that he spoke, the levity that he had, the passion, again, that seeped from his words, all those people have in common is just real authenticity. And almost that, to be more specific, that faith that I talked about. They were just faithful towards the things that they saw. They looked intensely at reality. They were observers first. And that's why they're all my heroes. I love them. And And another thing that I think is also really important, and it's very personal to me, is that they all kind of cover different grounds. Robin Williams is laughing, it's humor, it's connection, and so on. G.D. Krishnamurti is a little bit of all that, but also personal development, understanding the self and society and conditioning, all those things. Anthony Bourdain, travel, connection, again, cultures, understanding people. Steve, did you mention Steve Irwin on there? Oh
yes.
yeah, I forgot to talk about Steve Irwin. Well, it's the same. I mean, he's the same thing. Do you know how passionate he is about wildlife and just nature and also connections in general? I mean, all those people, it almost provides you, again, an interdisciplinary way of looking at everything, which I think is so fundamentally important. And that kind of reminds me of, we talked about it a few months ago. I went to Japan 2 summers ago. And of course, travel is amazing, and you should see, cool mountains and beautiful rivers and amazing waterfalls and so on. But the best part about travel and the best part about experiencing new things is really just seeing the subtle nuances in people. And you kind of understand that in how people are conditioned just by the way that their language structure is.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Japanese people, they're very formal. They're very direct people. And I've studied Japanese just a little bit. Not so much that I'm fluent by any means, but I know some words here and there. And what I will say is just the structure of their language, it's very direct. Like, he ate this, she did that, this is that, and so on. It's very direct. And you can kind of see how that directness, just in the way that they speak, almost pervades their way of how they cultivate relationships and how they look at society and how things should be and how things should run. And it's going back to my heroes, it kind of, you see that connection between different things. And that's why I like to have a list of heroes that are radically different, or at least different in that, their expertise is different. Because it provides you this layered view of things. And I think that's really important. I think that's one of, if not the most important thing.
Yeah, that's I feel like I see that with the people that I like here at KU, or like my friends.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's like my really good friends. I feel like the common thing is what you said at the start. They're radically themselves, or how'd you word it?
They're very authentic.
Yes.
I think that they're radically themselves. I can't remember specifically.
Yeah. But like, that is like just such an amazing trait when you can tell someone is real in themselves and they're passionate about they're passionate about themselves and what they do. And I mean, that's cool. And I can see how all those kind of it all kind of makes sense now. So one person that you didn't mention there, but I know you really like, is David Bohm.
David Bohm,
you brought him up.
Well, he's honestly
before.
the person out of that whole list, he's probably the person I researched the least.
Okay.
I like him just because, he's talked, well, obviously working with Richard Feynman and Einstein, all those brilliant guys, he has a long series of talks on YouTube, which I think everybody should listen to. And it's with David Bohm and Krishnamurti. They talked a lot. I think I've told you about that.
Yeah, I've seen some.
And it's really incredible because it kind of bridges that gap between science and faith. It bridges that gap between kind of that mechanical way of being in society nowadays to that faithful, spontaneous living. I'm not saying you shouldn't systemize your life. I'm not saying you shouldn't be forward-thinking. You shouldn't, I'm not saying it's arbitrary to think, well, what should I do in 5, 10 plus years? You should set goals. I mean, it's great. It's fun. It's great to set goals and have visions of things. But it's almost, and going back to what I said, it's that overextension. It's that over-reliance on it. And their talks are incredible.
Yeah.
Everybody should watch them.
So
David Bohm and Krishnamurti.
Yeah, and I actually have quotes that you gave me.
Oh, yeah.
Right here from both of them. And I would love for you to kind of break them down, explain them a little bit. So first one from Krishnamurti, it reads, The religious mind is the scientific mind, but the scientific mind is not the religious mind.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that?
Sure. Actually, you want to read the other ones real quick? Because
I can-
they all really connect.
Okay.
Yeah.
David Bohm says, we could say that practically all problems of the human race are due to the fact that thought is not proprioceptive. That's a big word.
Yeah, that's
I had
a
to
big
look
word.
that up before
You did
this.
it. You did. Yeah, you
and
told
I
me that.
honestly don't remember what it means. It was kind of confusing.
Sure.
No, I'm looking up the word real quick.
Oh, I got you.
Proprioception,
Yeah.
the body's ability to sense its own position, movements, and actions. So David Bohm is saying that all problems of the human race are due to the fact that thought is not that. So,
Not proprioceptive. Yeah.
yeah.
So, and there's also something else that I think is fascinating that David Deutsch said that I think is really important, also connects to it, and that is there's no such thing as instruction from without, only conjecture from within. And it also connects to what David Bohm said about how thought is not proprioceptive. We have this steady reliance nowadays on the things we think about and the ideas we have and the thoughts and the words that we read and so on. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't rely on those things. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying you should overlook them. You know, the things that we've created today are very efficient. You know, the intellect created the atom bomb. Thought created the atom bomb. Thought created vehicles and infrastructure and governments and all these things that help make life very efficient. But when it comes to root problems that we have about anxiety, about internal peacekeeping and all those things, thought really won't help us any further. Or rather, again, it's the other half of the coin. As going back to what I said about how there's a balance between both things. It's really fascinating because that's really how finding that balance is really how I got over addiction. It's how I got over my chronic behavior. It's how I cultivated a real kind of level of peace within me to where I'm really imperturbable for most of the day. I won't even say most of the day. I'm imperturbable, really. And I think it's really something important that I think, again, has not changed at all throughout human history, since even BC times to now. The thing nowadays is, you know, when we have such an over-reliance on information, and we have all these books and all these articles and all these blogs online and all these lectures and YouTube videos, and we have Elon Musk going to Mars and all these statements that are said in the press that are said in a way, or rather I'll say this, anything that is said, and the reason why words are faulty and thoughts are faulty and why there's kind of a devoid nature of them is that you can't help but say things in an ultimate way. Like, you can't help but do it. And that's why talking about like faith and all these things, it's really difficult and it's really ambiguous because at a certain extent you can't really talk about it. You can't really do it. But going back to what David Deutsch said about, with his quote, there is no instruction from without, only conjecture from within. It all comes from our consciousness. And it's all just continuous. And the way that chronic behavior develops and how we fall into stagnant living or addiction and all these things, or chronic depression and so on. Again, it's just that over-reliance on how we feel things should be rather than observing how things are.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah. Observing the bird.
Observing the bird. Look at the fucking bird. I mean, seriously. Look at the goddamn bird.
Yeah.
People, they see the bird one time and then they memorize all these facts about the fucking bird.
Uh-huh.
But they don't go back and just continue looking at it.
Yeah.
Like, look at your life. Look at your daily way. Like, just look at what's happening in front of you. What are you doing right now?
Yeah.
And it sometimes might be as simple, and I'll put it in practical terms. It sometimes might be as simple as, how are you sitting right now? Matter of fact, I'm going to adjust my seat because my back kind of hurts
Get a
right
little
now.
movement going.
Like sometimes you have really for me, practical advice I'd say is observe your body's tensions and where, your muscles might be contracting a little more than you're conscious of. And in kind of doing that and allowing yourself to do that, you kind of almost fall in a rhythm of, hey, this is a problem. I'm going to do that. Hey, this thing's happening over here. I'm going to do that. And you kind of get into this rhythm of spontaneous living where you just continue to make decision after decision after decision. And those are the decisions that you make, and it's clear cut, and that's the end of it. And it's like how I got over smoking. I eventually stopped caring, and I made a decision to smoke, and I enjoyed it. And I made the decision to enjoy it fully because that's the decision I made.
Yeah.
But as I continued to just do it consciously, spontaneously making that decision to do it, I slowly shifted my behavior from chronic to spontaneous. And in doing that, I was able to really get up, get out of my chair, and go make something of myself. Go do something. Go read. Go read and develop that reading habit. Get up and go to the gym. Put down the fucking spoon that is digging in the bowl of ice cream, and really just stop giving a shit about all these thoughts that are happening up here, all the words that are being said from over here, everything that's on the press that is making me feel extremely nihilistic towards the world and towards the future, and making use of what is right in front of me. Observing it, going back to the bird. Observe what's happening.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's I think that's one of the biggest things that our generation specifically needs to grasp because, like we've said before, we're in the age of information overload and everyone's fighting for our attention and everyone wants us to read every single news headline and think that their story is so important and make us think that the world's ending and oh my gosh, everything, there's so much and you need to buy this product and there's too much. And so understanding this and taking a step back and realizing the importance of presence, self-awareness, things like that. I mean, that would heal so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's not easy to do.
Yeah.
The presence, self-awareness isn't easy. So what are, for the people listening, obviously everyone wants to be more present, sure. How do you do it? What are some tips, tricks you have?
So first and foremost, I think that question is dumb. Well, no, because it's very difficult to get at because I'm not putting up any structure. Again, I said I'm not disclosing or I'm not disregarding the idea that you should organize your life or be systematic with things or be very forward thinking. These are very fun topics to, think about and look into further. But I'm also not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm also not saying you should do that. I'm not putting up any structure because if in building structures and structures being beliefs and feelings about how things should be or in the future, in the past, or regret and so on, in putting up any structures at all, they're eventually going to be broken down. And I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying that you should just forego everything that you think about the world, but do it situationally and just be very open to change, be extremely open to new experiences and what happens in the world. And naturally, you kind of get out of that chronic behavior. Like when you're about to make a bad decision, when you're about to pick up the pipe, again, pick up the spoon. Know that that's a decision you're going to make, and don't feel bad about it. If you're going to do it, fuck, I might go smoke later. Who knows? Kidding. But I do it every now and then. But the point is that it's not chronic behavior anymore.
Yeah.
And now that I have, really, I've how's a way to word this? Now that I've increased my agency over the decisions that I make from my day-to-day life, I'm able to make all sorts of decisions without an over-reliance on the fact that I should or should not be making those decisions at all. I just make them So just make those decisions. Just make the decisions you want to make and just do it. And I know that's very ambiguous. That's not entirely practical, although your question wanted a practical answer.
I just think the audience might want a practical something
to
say, okay, here's how I'm going to start
Yeah.
implementing the things I just heard, because
Sure.
I don't think you can go 0 to 100 full mindset switch
No.
without doing some practical things.
Sure. I feel like that, I feel like that in and of itself, that kind of seeking an answer, that kind of seeking an instruction manual of how to do things, that almost perpetuates the problem. That almost reinforces the problem. You know, in terms of feeling that you're falling behind in life, or feeling bad about where you are and where things are going. Just for a moment, just for a goddamn moment, whether it be for the next 10 minutes, for the next 5 seconds, or the next day or month or whatever, just allow yourself some space to make a decision, or just be with how things are, and then moving from there. You know, going back to what I said, you know, you don't know if the floor is going to fall out from under you.
Yeah.
And to say something practical about it, I'd say there is really nothing that you need to do or you don't need to do. It's really up to you. So it's really difficult to get. It's like trying to give you instructions for something that doesn't require instruction. You know, because it's really personal.
Right,
you know, what works for what. The way the decisions I will make throughout my day are radically different from anybody else's. So it's really hard for me to say you should do this or you should do that.
Right.
But I had to kind of speak very ambiguously about it. Get a feel for how you are right now, and maybe actually, you know what? I'll say this: have it start with your body. You know, as I just adjusted the way I was sitting, because my lower back was hurting and I wasn't really conscious, or the fact that I was clenching my ass to try to get up a little higher. Yeah. But like, be really aware of the tension in your body that's you're doing unconsciously, and move from there. You know, start with your body, feel the tension within you, and then say, look at what you're doing right now. I'm laying in my bed. I'm going to get up. You know, I'm going to go take a shit or go get some water or do something. I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
And you kind of fall in this rhythm of naturally being spontaneous. And if you really, really, really are interested in changing your life or making the good decisions, you'll make them if you really want to. If you really want to, like people down in the depths of hell, of depression and so on, you know, a lot of people will say they want to do things, but they don't really want to.
Yeah.
And I'd say understand why. Understand why if you may or may not really want to do something, first off. And secondly, start making decisions, whether it be, or at least start from your body. And then have it move outward, have it protrude outward into your daily life. You know, like for instance, the other day, I was really pissed. This is kind of trivial, but I was pissed because I was playing pickup basketball and I got my ass kicked. So I went home and I didn't do anything. I didn't like kick a trash can or anything, but I could sense on my drive home that like I was really tensed up, like my body, my shoulders, and all these things. So I just kind of turned the music down and I just readjusted myself. I readjusted my shoulders and so on. I turned the music back up and I just observed what was happening on the road. And I got home, and now that I'm in a state of observing what's happening around me, because I had already made those prior decisions of observing myself, still doing that, you naturally just fall into a rhythm of doing things that way. And again, if you really want to change things, it'll happen. You'll make those decisions. You'll know what to do. But it's understanding that chronic behavior. That's the real thing. That's the key. And even saying that that's the key kind of puts an image in people's heads, that they, like, I need to do this or I need to do that. But it's very personal. You get what I mean? It comes from a state of intuition rather than instruction.
Yeah.
Or
there's no roadmap.
Exactly.
Here,
and you should really just feel how you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feel where you are, how you are, and so on.
Yeah.
Really.
That's interesting.
So again, I know my answer is a little ambiguous, in terms of practicality. But
right.
The most practical thing I'd say is just start with your body. How do you feel? Like, is your body 10-step? And just move from there. So.
No, I like that. I mean, not everything has to be so practical when, if you look at the internet, everything is.
Oh, God, yeah.
That's interesting. It's a hard concept to grasp, and you kind of can't fully grasp it,
it's not,
if that makes sense,
It's just a way of being.
Yeah.
It's not even a way of being, but again, punching when you must. Attacking when you must. Going back to fighting.
Yeah.
And that's why I think fighting is a good thing to watch because it displays that's an art. But again, all of this living is an art. Really, it's artistry. Being able to move throughout the day in a way that is spontaneous, that's art. Being able to do that. And that's kind of where creativity comes from, because you're not limiting yourself. There's no structures there that are limiting how you are, how you feel things should be. You're just kind of moving throughout the day. And honestly, being that way has, again, it's improved every part of my life, really. And it's improved my peace. It's improved my inner state of being. It's improved my performance on the basketball court. I mean, really. It's improved my trading. I mean, I trade and I invest in stuff, and I look at charts all morning, and I pay attention to economic updates and so on, and earnings and so on. And it's really allowed me to adapt to a changing environment, because the environment's always changing.
Yeah.
Whether it's markets, whether it's relationships, whether it's a game of basketball,
Sure.
It's always changing. And understanding how to adapt and being in the flow of things, really it pervades understanding how to do that, it pervades all parts of your life, whether it be managing your peace or, again, improving your performance, being able to be yourself socially in a crowd of people. This helped me. This helped me talk to a lot of people. I used to have a really inner it almost destroyed me at many times throughout my life. Just the anxiety that I'd get whenever I'd go out in public and try to talk to people. It really helped me flow through that and just kind of slowly have that feeling fade out. And at least that's how it happens.
Yeah.
Again, that's kind of the process by which it happens. Just slowly fades away. Again, my smoking habit slowly faded away, and I just kept flowing through things. So, again, that's kind of right now. That's kind of the most practical, straightforward answer I could probably give you.
No, that's
so
that's cool that it's applicable to everything. Like, you can study Zen, philosophy, religion, whatever, and then you're applying it to financial markets. That's super interesting.
Well, that's the thing is, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, Zen, and even various philosophies, Carl Jung, Nietzsche, and so on, they're all really saying the same thing, just in their own way. Mm-hmm. And it's just that way of that that self-agency, that flowing through things. And there's no specific word for it. There's no, whether it be in English or really in most languages, there's no specific word for it. There might be something in Japanese, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
But, really, yeah.
So
it's interesting.
Kind of wrapping up here.
Okay.
Something cool about us interviewing a lot of students is people are kind of at the start of their careers. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you have a lot of ambition. What are your long-term goals? What do you want to do? Do you want to write?
Yeah, sure.
Speak? What do you want to do?
Yeah, and as I said, these are really fun, interesting things to think about. Well, first and foremost, I'm a writer. I like writing. I love writing. I'm not going to plug myself. I love writing. I'm always going to manage my investments, my finances. I'm always going to do that. And I am a finance student, and I am working towards getting a job out of school. I'm interviewing at the moment. I am relying on one place at the moment, but I also have 4 or 5 different interviews coming up. And really, I'm just kind of moving through things. I'm just kind of moving with the changing panorama. That's really what I'm doing.
Awesome.
5-10 years, I have goals here and there. I want to work with wildlife eventually. I want to give back, whether it be, investing, donating to charities and so on. I have a bunch of ideas, but the most important thing is what I'm doing right now and what I think I'll be doing for the rest of my life. And that is I'm going to write, I'm going to manage my finances, I'm going to understand capital markets, and I'm going to continue reading. I'm going to continue learning.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's what I'm doing.
Love it.
Yeah.
You got anything else for the people listening?
Sure. I suppose the reason why I am the way I am is because I think the most important thing in life, and especially for college students who are about to graduate and go out into the world and make something of themselves, understand, or at least start to be interested in understanding your self-agency. And I'm not necessarily talking specifically about chronic behavior, being spontaneous, presence, and so on, but understand that the ideas you have really can change the world. They really can, especially in this day and age when you can make a 50-word blog post and it can go viral. You can write a tweet and it can go viral, make an Instagram post, a YouTube video, and so on. And, you have LinkedIn, you can network with people. I'd say really understand, get a feel for yourself, get a feel for daily living, observing things as they happen, as they occur. And really, most of all, above everything I've said the entire day, our entire talk, just love something. Really just feel passionate about something. Observe something, whether it be somebody else. I love you. I do. I love you.
I love you too, Sam.
I know, because I look at you. I see all of you at once. And I love writing. I love literature. I love the building. I love this building. And this building
It's pretty cool.
It's a really cool
pretty
building.
cool.
Yeah. I mean, the whole campus, KU campus is incredible. Mizzou campus. I love St. Louis, the arts, Soulard, downtown. I love traveling. I love people. I mean, just love something. And in really sacrificing yourself in that moment to love somebody or something else, you really start to learn a lot about yourself and what self-agency really means.
Yeah.
And how you can continue to go on loving more things.
Yeah.
And that will provide you many things. So that's what I have to say about that.
Romanticize life.
Yeah.
Fall in love with the little
Romanticize
things.
everything,
I love
man.
it.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? I know you said you're not going to plug yourself.
Oh, okay. I
but
guess I will plug myself.
You should. You should.
I am on Twitter. My name is, I actually just changed my username the other day. I can't remember.
Did?
I did.
It's not,
I am on
it's not
Substack
Boundless
though.
Sam
I
anymore?
just changed it actually. It's actually non-dual stew.
Non-dual
Non-dual stew.
STEW.
STEW. Yep. STEW. I also am on Substack, The Clarity Project.
What's that?
Oh, that's my blog. actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Substack.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was called that.
it's called Substack. I am also on Substack. That's where you can find me. I am actually looking into creating videos in the future because I just got a new camera.
Nice.
And I'm looking into traveling this summer, and I've told you about that.
Yep.
But that's where
Sweet.
you'll find me.
Dude, I'm excited for you.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Sam Stewart, everybody.
I know. Thank you, guys. I absolutely love this.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Hopefully I can do it in the future.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff, dude.
Hey, good job, guys.
Is that pretty good?
Let's go.
I'm a talker, dude. I could talk to a fucking wall.
Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Smarter. To see more, get connected with us on Instagram at smarter.pod. We do giveaways, exclusive content, and much more. We really appreciate all of the support and hope to see you next episode.